The knock that shattered silence. The house was suffocatingly quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ribs and refuses to leave. It had been 5 years since Ethan's death, yet every second of this anniversary seemed to throb with his absence. Then came the knock at the door, soft, almost polite, yet it carried a weight that made my blood run cold. Who could possibly come here today, of all days, knowing the raw ache that had become our life? David and I exchanged a glance, and I realized instantly that the air had thickened with something I could not yet name. Eyes that pierced through grief. When I opened the door, 2 strangers stood there, and in their gaze was something impossible: gratitude. My heart stuttered, disbelief freezing my words. Gratitude for our son. But how? The woman's lips trembled, the man's eyes glistening as they spoke my son's name like it was a lifeline. "We need to speak with you about Ethan," the man said, voice low but urgent, cutting through years of numbness like a knife. I wanted to close the door, to retreat to safety, but some invisible force rooted me to the spot. They stepped inside, and every detail about them screamed of secrets untold, of stories buried beneath layers of pain and courage. "Your son! He saved my husband," the woman whispered, voice cracking. The room spun. My knees threatened to buckle under the weight of revelation. Saved? How could that be possible? Ethan had been gone, and yet somehow, through something we had never imagined, he was still reaching across the void to touch lives. The words were soft, but the impact was seismic. I had known Ethan had been an organ donor, but I had never allowed myself to imagine the reality. The couple spoke of his lungs, transplanted to a man who would have died without them. My heart clenched, a mix of pride and grief tearing me in half. Every detail they shared, every moment of their fear, their hopelessness, and the life Ethan had given, felt like shards piercing my chest. And then came the pause, the moment that made the air tremble. "There's more you need to know." Ethan had lived a life behind closed doors, invisible to us in ways that now made my blood run cold. The couple began to reveal things he had done in secret, acts of bravery, anonymous help, hidden kindnesses that no parent could have imagined. Every revelation twisted my memory of him, turning my grief into a complex knot of awe, regret, and longing. I had thought I knew my son, but the truth was far more dangerous, far more heroic, and far more heartbreaking than, with trembling hands, the man handed me a small, leather-bound journal. "He left this for you," he said. I opened it, the pages whispering Ethan's voice, his thoughts, his secrets. He had uncovered things, terrifying, hidden truths in the hospital that threatened lives. He had acted in silence, ensuring justice without causing harm, documenting every step as if he had known we would one day find the pieces. The weight of what I held made my fingers ache, my mind reel. Each entry tore through me like fire. Ethan had not only saved lives through his organ donation, but he had been a silent warrior against a hidden darkness we could never have suspected. The journal detailed threats, covert actions, and even people who had tried to harm others. My son, my boy, had carried burdens I had never imagined, leaving clues and hope for us to follow after his death. The realization was unbearable. We had grieved without knowing half the truth, mourning a hero while believing he was just a boy. As we read, David and I realized Ethan had planned for us to continue his work, to take up the courage he had hidden so well. There was no room for despair in his writings, only instructions, encouragement, and faith that we could carry forward the light he had left behind. The sorrow of losing him collided with the urgency of living his legacy. He had given life beyond his own, and now it was ours to honor. Though we were trembling, unprepared, and still raw with grief after the couple left, silence returned to the house, heavier than before but now tinged with purpose. The journal rested on the table, a small but explosive object that promised both answers and more questions. David held my hand, and in his eyes, I saw the same storm of emotions I felt: heartbreak, awe, and a reluctant readiness to embrace what Ethan had left behind. We were no longer just grieving parents. We were guardians of a legacy written in shadows, courage, and love. Hours later, I watched David staring out the window, lost in thought, the sunlight falling unevenly across the room, highlighting the journal like it was a relic of some sacred truth. "We have to follow this," he said quietly, almost to himself. "We have to see what he wanted us to see. Do what he wanted us to do." And in that moment, I realized our grief was no longer passive. It was fuel. Ethan's life, death, and secrets had reshaped our world entirely, giving us a mission, a haunting, and a purpose that would bind us to him forever, even in his absence.